They stayed for a long time. The helmet stayed on.
Destiny 2 is a deceptively terrible game. What's up guys, I'm Insidious, and in this video I'll be covering the game in detail and giving you my personal thoughts to explain why Destiny 2 is a massive waste of potential. I'll be going over the game and the lore separately, so stay tuned till the end and be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Cliché plug aside, let's get started. For those who don't know, Destiny 2 is a sci-fi first-person shooter MMORPG. Like most MMOs, it's plagued by paywalls, microtransactions, and pay-to-win mechanics so awful it's more of a pay-to-have-a-chance situation. Not only do you have to pay to unlock certain guns and content, there's an entire character class locked behind a $40 DLC. Now, I know this is pretty tame compared to a lot of other MMOs on the market these days, but still, incorporating these kinds of features in any game ruins the value and integrity of the experience, especially in games like this where it's presented as an open-world free-for-all where time and dedication should equal success. Instead, this competitive environment is dominated solely by the top spenders. Aside from rampant monetization, Destiny 2 also suffers from several poor development choices meant to make the game grindier. For instance, the game's currency, known as Glimmer, has a hard cap at 250,000. While this doesn't usually cause problems, it prevents you from being able to stockpile Glimmer when there's nothing you want to buy. It also forces the player to immediately spend any Glimmer they earn before they can go back to playing the game once they reach the cap. Also, all gear stats are not only capped, but borderline impossible to work with. Stats can only go up to 100, and even then, all available modifications only mildly offset the base stats. So for any specific build, you have to work around whatever item you had to begin with. And just slightly raising those stats can take dozens of hours even for seasoned pros. Take the Ace of Spades, for example, an exotic primary hand cannon and fan favorite for PvP. Out of the 7 main weapon stats, only 3 of them can be raised, meaning a 10,000 hour sweat and a total noob will be almost equally matched if they both bought the Ace of Spades to the Forsaken DLC. That's not accounting for armor or secondaries, of course, but my point is, no matter how much time you spend grinding in this game, you're just running in place, not really getting anywhere. Also, all of your gear has a separate power level that affects how the damage you deal and receive. As I understand it, when a player or NPC damages another entity, the damage it deals is based on the ratio of the defender's armor level to the attacker's weapon level. Now, in practice, this could make up for the problem I mentioned earlier, where veteran pros could scale up their damage against low-level mobs or new players without having to rebalance the higher-level enemies to make up for it. But raising an item's power level is extremely difficult and expensive, so you're better off constantly scrapping your entire inventory and equipping any new gear you find that outranks whatever your current loadout is. This means you'll never really get to enjoy the gear you have because you're constantly switching between items based on their power level rather than your personal preference. There's also a cap on power level, so after about 20 or 30 hours of grinding, you should be good for the rest of the season. But that's because they raise the cap at the end of each season so that the grind never stops. If you spend 1,000 hours maxing out your Titan and then take a few months off the game, then you're dealing with noob stats all over again, and you just got clipped by my little sister playing on an alt account I created yesterday. This game is slow, tedious, and needlessly complicated, and it's meant to be that way so you'll have to spend more time grinding, and hopefully so that you'll just give up and pay your way to success. Another major flaw is the campaigns. I'll talk more about the story behind them in the second part of this video, but as for the campaigns themselves, you physically can't access them. That's right, they permanently remove the older campaigns, even the ones people paid for, and they make it so you have to buy the latest DLC and the latest campaign to play any story-related missions. There are seasonal quests, but those generally require having the season pass to play, and they're almost always the same quest on a slightly different map for the whole season. If you want to experience anything that even resembles a real game with a plot, you'll just have to bite the bullet and spend money on the new campaign before it gets deleted. And I personally hate this, because it creates a false sense of urgency. The game probably has enough lore that it would take hundreds of hours to explain it all, but everything you'll ever get access to could probably be summarized in 30 minutes. If you want to be in on the story, you have to be playing when something is relevant and new. They removed most of the original planets, killed off important characters, and scrapped some of the most memorable and iconic missions. On one hand, I'm lucky that I got to play through campaigns like Forsaken and Red War when they were still around, but I also feel cheated that my favorite campaign got removed to create an artificial incentive to buy newer campaigns. And yes, I actually used to play Destiny 2, in fact I have almost 400 hours in it. Anyone familiar with my channel might even know that I used to post Crucible highlight videos back in the day. Ultimately, Destiny 2 is a poorly executed mess that feels draining and miserable to play, and I'm saying that from personal experience. Gameplay-wise, this game is a catastrophe in every way. So now, I'll move on to the lore section of this video. For anyone who doesn't know, the lore of Destiny 2 is pretty crazy. There's no way I could ever explain it all in this video, and I probably don't even know 10% of the story myself. That said, this isn't an issue of me being stupid, it's an issue of the devs overcomplicating their game. Take the Guardians, for instance. As far as I know, we play as semi-immortal heroes kept alive by Guilty Spark's baby brother, having been revived eons after we died, living normal human lives. And now our souls have been manifested into new bodies and imbued with the magical powers bestowed upon us by a great ball in the sky called the Traveler, so that we can fight off the forces of corruption and anti-light that run rampant throughout the solar system. This has got to be the most overcomplicated backstory I've ever heard for what is basically the Space Marines from Helldivers. The whole story about Guardians being resurrected after millennia but losing their memories defeats the purpose, because we're basically just regular people at that point. When we get killed, other players can interact with our ghosts to revive us. So why couldn't we just be normal people that get knocked unconscious instead of people that constantly die and come back to life? I mean, you might say, oh, but if you weren't immortal, couldn't some enemy stumble upon your unconscious body and kill you for good? Well, if our ghost is destroyed while we're dead, then we're dead for good. And having our ghost, our literal only lifeline, just hovering over a corpse puts us in the exact same position as being unconscious would, because any opportunistic enemy that stumbles across us could just finish us off for good. It actually makes less sense that we're immortal, because as we saw with Cayde 6, enemies know that shooting the ghost once is enough to kill even the Hunter Vanguard. So why wouldn't they just shoot our ghost when we're down? The enemies pick and choose when to be smart based on whether or not the devs feel like killing off a Guardian today. If we were just normal people, I could accept this, but it's so dumb for an immortal being to have such a stupid weakness. To die because a ghost that didn't even need to put itself in harm's way decided to peek its head out at the wrong time and got no-scoped by a random alien. Admittedly, the story is compelling at times, but it's diluted by inconsistencies like this to make it hard to be immersed. And it's overly complicated by needless details. The parts worth playing are few and far between. I think the biggest tragedy was vaulting the Forsaken campaign. My personal favorite, it started with one of Destiny's most beloved characters being killed, and it was a story of revengeance. It is pretty hard to sell the average gamer on the 1,000-page explanation about why Alien A is evil, Alien B isn't, miscellaneous rot number 6 is about to destroy the world, and Crystal 8 is the key to our survival. But making a story about revenge and the death of a beloved character is compelling. That is something many people can get behind, and instead, we get the former and not the latter. Destiny 2 isn't telling coherent and compelling stories anymore, they're just selling content, without any sort of regard to its greater impact or how it's going to be received. Forsaken took something away from us and then gave us closure. Red War put us through a harrowing struggle that nearly brought us to our knees, and it showed the Guardians they weren't as untouchable as they thought. Now, they do things like bringing back Uldren Sov, the main antagonist of Forsaken, just because they felt like it. This kind of decision makes a lot of the other deaths feel less valuable, since we know the devs could just say someone comes back to life if they want them back. And before anyone comments saying I misinterpreted any of this or I didn't cover something right, I've only covered a tiny fraction of the lore, but most of these details are just irrelevant. Hate me if you want, but if you could play through an entire game multiple times over without ever discovering something or needing to know it, then it's probably not that important. No one needs a hidden message that says whether Shaxx did or did not have sex with Mara Sov. And yet, most of this lore is pointless information like that. It doesn't have any bearing or relevance to the game whatsoever. Although the concept behind most of this is admittedly interesting and there are some well-written parts, most of this story is just bland and hollow. The game could be so much better if they improved on the execution or if they focused more on creating an integral plot. But there's a reason why you have to pay to unlock the campaigns. This game isn't trying to be about a story or some sort of plot that we're following. This game itself is too much of a wreck to make up for this creatively bankrupt plot. So when you really look at it, Destiny 2 truly is a massive waste of potential. It started as a solid concept, but it was bogged down by poor development choices and bad writing. Well, I've never made a video like this before, so I hope you enjoyed, and comment down below if you want to see more videos like this or if you prefer my usual gaming content. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. I will see you in the next video. Keep it real.